I want you to imagine just for a second that you are totally stranded. You're thousands of miles away from your home.
Right.
You're surrounded by hostile enemies, and you're trapped in this harsh, freezing winter landscape.
It's just a complete nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And to make matters infinitely worse, you've just discovered that your entire leadership team,
Oh, boy.
yeah, the people who brought you out there and who were supposed to guide you back, they have all just been suddenly and brutally assassinated. What do you even do?
Well, most people in that situation would, completely fracture. They'd panic, turn on each other, and simply perish in the elements.
But today, we are diving into a stack of sources you sent us about a group of people who actually lived through that exact nightmare. We're doing a deep dive into the Anabasis, which is this famous 4th century BC account by the ancient Greek soldier and writer Xenophon.
Yeah, and looking at the notes you've shared, it becomes clear very quickly that this isn't just some dry historical ledger. It's widely considered like one of the foundational survival stories in human history.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is to really explore the legendary expedition of the 10,000, which was this massive army of Greek mercenaries.
Right.
We're going to dissect the mechanics of how, staring down total annihilation, they basically managed to form a moving, functioning democracy just to survive.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. And
Yeah.
we'll look at the brutal logistics of their journey, the brilliant PR spin that saved the author's reputation, and uncover how this ancient text secretly provided the exact blueprint for a modern cult classic film.
Yeah, but I mean, to understand how 10,000 highly trained soldiers ended up starving in the snow,
Yeah.
we have to look at the job they were originally hired to do.
Right, because the initial mission was entirely different from the survival march it became.
Exactly. The initial setup is crucial.
We're basically talking about the ultimate botched job here. Let's set the stage based on your sources. So in 401 BC, this ambitious guy named Cyrus the Younger decides he wants to seize the throne of the Persian Empire from his own brother.
Right. King Artaxerxes II.
Yeah. But Cyrus needs muscle. He needs an elite fighting force to punch through the royal army. So he hires this massive army of Greek mercenaries.
And we really have to unpack why he specifically wanted Greeks for this. Because at the time, Greek hoplites were the premier heavy infantry of the ancient world.
Okay, so paint a picture of that for us.
Well, you have to imagine men covered in heavy bronze armor, carrying these large, overlapping wooden shields, they called them Anabasis, and wielding 8-foot-long spears.
That sounds terrifying.
It was. When they locked their shields together, they formed a phalanx. Now, the Persian military, by contrast, relied heavily on light infantry, skirmishers, and archers.
Got it. So sending a Greek phalanx into a sprawling, disorganized Persian infantry line is essentially like, I don't know, driving a heavily armored snowplow through a traffic jam.
That is the perfect analogy, honestly. The mechanics of ancient warfare with the phalanx, it just grinds forward. And Cyrus knew this. So he marches these mercenaries all the way from the Aegean coast deep into the heart of the Persian Empire.
Which is a massive journey on its own.
Oh, absolutely. And they finally clash with the king's massive royal army at the Battle of Cunaxa, which is right near Babylon.
And reading through the tactical breakdowns in your notes, the wildest part of this battle to me is that the Greeks do exactly what they were paid to do. Like the snowplow works.
Right, it works perfectly.
They smash right through the Persian lines, and they fight to a clear tactical victory on their side of the battlefield. But the victory is entirely hollow because, in the absolute chaos of the cavalry charge, Cyrus the Younger gets himself killed.
Yeah, and that strategic failure just instantly overrides the tactical victory. I mean, the Greeks defeated the troops in front of them, but their employer is dead.
Right.
The entire political objective of the expedition just evaporates in a single afternoon.
It's like executing a flawless, hostile corporate takeover. You win the proxy battle, only to find out the CEO who hired you died of a heart attack during the final boardroom meeting.
Exactly.
And now the rival company is literally trying to execute you.
Yeah, and the geographical reality of their situation is terrifying. I mean, the very title of the book, Anabasis, it means an ascent or a march from the coastline into the interior.
Which they had been doing for months.
Right. They have marched into the deepest part of the interior. Babylon is hundreds and hundreds of miles from the safety of the sea.
And here is where I get really hung up on the narrative, because the Persian army doesn't just attack them again right away.
No, they don't.
Right. Instead, a Persian governor named Tissaphernes approaches the Greeks and offers a truce. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait, they just fought a massive bloody battle against this guy's forces. Why on earth would the seasoned Greek generals walk right into his camp?
Well, it comes down to desperation and logistics. You have to remember, the Greeks are an army of heavy infantry deep in enemy territory with zero supply lines.
Oh, right, no food.
Exactly. They cannot stay where they are, and they cannot easily march home while constantly being harried by Persian cavalry.
Hmm.
So Tissaphernes plays on this vulnerability.
He uses their hunger against them.
Yep. He offers to guide them out of the country and provide them with markets to buy food. The Greek senior officers, led by the Spartan general Clearchus, realize they desperately need this logistical lifeline.
So they go to a diplomatic dinner at his camp.
And Tissaphernes springs the trap. The moment the top Greek brass enter the tent, they are seized. The generals, including Clearchus, are later taken to the king and decapitated.
Wiping out the entire C-suite in one bloody move. I mean, that is just brutal.
It really is.
Now you have 10,000 heavily armed, terrified men sitting in the middle of Mesopotamia. They have no leaders, no employer, no money, and the Persian army is breathing down their necks.
And this is really the pivot point of the Anabasis. The story completely ceases to be about a political war of succession. It becomes a story of pure, grueling survival.
So how do they prevent total anarchy? I mean, you have 10,000 mercenaries, guys whose whole thing is fighting for money, who just watch their commanders get butchered. I would expect them to just scatter into the desert or surrender.
Well, they fall back on their cultural programming, essentially. They are Greeks. They're accustomed to the civic structures of the city-state, the polis.
Oh, interesting. So they bring the city-state with them.
Exactly. So the men gather in a massive assembly, and they actually hold an election. They elect new leaders from within their ranks, one of whom is a relatively young, untested Athenian named Xenophon.
Okay, Xenophon enters the chat.
Right. And they vote to march north, straight up across Mesopotamia, through the jagged mountains of Armenia, aiming for the Black Sea.
Hold on, though, because the sources use this phrase, marching republic, which sounds incredibly noble. It evokes this image of, like, philosophers drafting a constitution in the snow.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Right. Because logistics-wise, aren't 10,000 starving men without a supply chain just a heavily armed mob raiding villages? I mean, you try moving that many hungry people through hostile territory without a grocery store?
It is entirely necessary to strip away the romanticism here. The reality on the ground was completely vicious. They were basically an occupying force on the move. Right.
Because they had no supply train, they relied entirely on foraging, which is a polite historical term for taking what you want by force.
Pillage and plunder.
Yeah. The text in Book 4 actually describes them attacking Taushian fortresses specifically because the locals had gathered all their provisions inside. Later, they ally with one local tribe just so they can act as mercenaries to plunder a neighboring tribe, the Dryle, just to feed themselves.
Survival by any means necessary. And just think about how hard it is to get a modern committee of like 5 people to agree on where to order lunch.
Oh, totally.
Now imagine trying to get 10,000 desperate, freezing soldiers to vote on a military strategy while taking arrow fire from mountain ridges.
The mechanics of that voting process are fascinating, honestly. Obviously, they didn't have ballot boxes out there. Decisions were often made by shouting or by the clashing of spears against shields.
Wow, that must have been deafening. It was. Xenophon and the other generals had to use intense rhetoric to convince the men of a strategy before actually implementing it. And the environment they were marching through was just unforgiving.
Yeah, the sources mention deep snows in Armenia. We are talking about Greeks in sandals and linen tunics dealing with blizzards, frostbite, and snow blindness.
Right. Xenophon details men simply sitting down in the snow, just refusing to rave because their toes were rotting from frostbite or their energy was completely spent.
That is horrifying.
And at the same time, they're being harassed by fierce mountain tribes like the Carducci. The tactical mechanics had to shift entirely. The Greeks could no longer fight in that massive organized phalanx on a flat plain.
Because they're in the mountains now.
Exactly. They had to innovate. So they created specialized units of lightly armed peltasts to run up mountain peaks, secure the high ground, and basically protect the main column from enemies rolling boulders down the passes.
It is just an agonizing day-to-day grind, which makes the climax of this march so incredibly cinematic. Like, they finally reach a summit at Mount Theshiz.
Yeah.
The vanguard of the army crests the hill. They look out over the horizon, and this massive roar goes up.
The famous cry, they shout, Thalada, Thalate.
The sea, the sea.
Yeah. Reaching the Black Sea meant absolutely everything to them. The sea was the highway of the ancient Greek world. It represented access to Greek coastal colonies, merchant ships, communication, and, the promise of home.
The ultimate relief.
When the vanguard shouts, the word ripples back through the entire column. Men just start weeping. They gather stones to build a massive monument right there on the peak.
You read that and you instinctively think, roll credits, they made it, the heroes go home.
Mm-hmm.
But peeling back the layers of the Anabasis, you realize that hitting the beach wasn't the end of the story at all. It was just the start of a massive logistical nightmare.
Oh, completely. This is where the grim reality of ancient travel really sets in. Books 5 to 7 cover this chaotic aftermath. They reach the coastal city of Trapezus, expecting salvation. But they run into a glaring math problem. There simply aren't enough ships to transport 10,000 armed men back to mainland Greece.
So they are just stuck. Again.
They are stranded on the coast. They send one of their commanders, Chrysippus, to sail ahead and secure a fleet, but he's largely unsuccessful. So they have to make this brutal triage decision.
What do?
They put the sick, the injured, the women who follow the camp, and the oldest men on the few boats they have. The rest of the army, like the bulk of the fighting force, has to continue marching by land along the treacherous coastline.
Oh, man. And this pressure cooker completely shatters the unity of that marching republic, right? Like the factions just split.
The cohesion totally dissolves. At one point, the army breaks into 3 separate competing factions. They're dealing with internal mutinies.
It's just falling apart.
Yeah, and they are so destitute that they end up hiring themselves out as mercenaries again. This time for a Thracian ruler named Seuthes II.
You'd think they would have learned their lesson about mercenary work.
Right. And even then, Seuthes attempts to cheat them out of their pay, which forces them into yet another conflict just to get what they are actually owed.
During all of this chaos, Xenophon's own leadership is being severely challenged. The men are blaming him for the lack of provisions. And there's this one moment in your notes that really stands out to me.
Oh, the trial.
Yeah. Xenophon is formally accused of beating a soldier during the brutal winter march, and his men want to punish him for it. But he doesn't survive this by drawing his sword. He survives it through Socratic reasoning.
It's amazing. The mechanics of how he diffuses that situation are just brilliant. Xenophon doesn't deny striking the man. Instead, he systematically questions the accuser right in front of the assembly.
Like a cross-examination.
Exactly. He asks why he struck him. Was it out of malice? No. He proves that the soldier had basically given up, was burying himself in the snow to die, and was refusing to carry vital supplies. Xenophon argues that he beat the man to force him to keep moving, effectively saving his life. And by appealing to their logic and their shared civic identity, he actually convinces the mob to drop the charges.
He literally talks his way out of a mutiny. But clearly his reputation was taking a massive hit. He has a major PR crisis on his hands, so he needs to write his own version of history to clear his name. But he knows people might not trust a book written by a commander defending his own controversial decisions.
Which brings us to the authorship mystery, which I love. When Xenophon finally sits down to write this account years later, around 370 BC, he doesn't put his own name on the manuscript.
I know.
He publishes the Anabasis under a pseudonym. He calls himself the Mystogenes of Syracuse.
He essentially creates a 4th century BC burner account to write a 5-star review of his own leadership. That is hilarious.
It is a phenomenal piece of propaganda. The Greek historian Plutarch, analyzing this centuries later, pointed out exactly why Xenophon did it. By framing the narrative as the work of an objective, third-party observer, the heroics of Xenophon the character seem much more credible.
Right.
The reader thinks, wow, this Xenophon guy really held it together, without realizing Xenophon himself is feeding them that exact narrative.
It's brilliant spin. But, jokes about burner accounts aside, the scholars today universally agree Xenophon wrote it. And the way he wrote it is a massive part of why we still care about it today.
Absolutely. The prose itself is a masterclass in clarity. Xenophon writes in a very unadorned, direct style, using what is known as the Attic Greek dialect.
Which is important, right?
Very. Attic Greek became the gold standard of classical literature. Because the Anabasis avoids overly poetic language and focuses on clear descriptions of logistics, geography, and military maneuvers, it has served as the foundational, unabridged textbook for students learning classical Greek for centuries.
It is basically the gateway drug for ancient history students.
Pretty much.
But the reason the story of the 10,000 resonates so deeply isn't just because it's an excellent grammar exercise. The tactical lessons and the sheer drama of this survival story altered the course of human history in ways that are, frankly, mind-blowing.
We really have to look at the geopolitical earthquake this expedition caused. Because prior to the March of the 10,000, the Persian Empire was viewed by the Greeks as this impenetrable, monolithic superpower.
Too big to fail.
Exactly. It was simply too vast, too wealthy, and too well defended. The logistical barrier of marching an army into that massive multi-ethnic empire just seemed impossible. But Xenophon shattered that illusion.
He proved it could be done.
He proved that a lean, highly disciplined Greek army could pierce the very heart of the empire, survive everything the king threw at them, and walk out the other side.
He exposes a massive vulnerability, and certain powerful kings are paying very close attention to that data.
Yes, they are. Exactly 2 generations later, Philip of Macedon studies this account. He realizes that if 10,000 leaderless mercenaries could march through Persia and survive, a unified, well-supplied Greek army could conquer it.
Oh, wow.
And Philip passes that strategic revelation down to his son, Alexander the Great. Alexander literally uses the Anabasis as a tactical playbook to invade and dismantle the Persian Empire. The later historian Arrian even titled his biography of Alexander, The Anabasis of Alexander, as a direct homage.
Xenophon proved the concept so Alexander the Great could scale it. That alone cements the text in history, but the legacy bleeds out of military history and into language and pop culture in some incredibly surprising ways, too.
Oh, the linguistic legacy is particularly amusing. Because the text is largely a day-to-day diary of an army on the move, there's a specific Greek verb, exilano, which translates to he marches forth. Xenophon uses this exact word relentlessly.
Like over 24 times.
The repetition became notoriously exhausting for generations of language students. So by the late 19th century, American classical students, specifically starting at the Roxbury Latin School in Massachusetts, decided to vent their frustration through a pun.
I love this story.
Because the English translation March 4th sounds identical to the date March 4th, they transformed March 4th into Exilano Day.
Stressed out students inventing a niche holiday just to cope with Xenophon's vocabulary. That is amazing. But the pop culture influence goes even wider than that. You find traces of the Anabasis everywhere. Like in Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, when the subterranean explorers finally discover a massive underground ocean, they shout, Thalata, Thalata.
Right, it has become the universal literary cry for discovering a lifeline when you believed you were doomed.
But the cultural adaptation that absolutely floors me is from 1979. There is a cult classic film called The Warriors, which is based on a 1965 novel by Saul Urich.
Warriors come out to play. I mean, it is deeply ingrained in the culture.
Yes. For anyone who hasn't seen the film, The Warriors follows a New York street gang from Coney Island. They travel deep into the Bronx for a massive midnight summit of all the gangs in the city.
Sounds familiar.
Right. The charismatic leader who called the summit is suddenly assassinated. Our heroes are framed for the murder, their leadership is gone, and they have to fight their way back home through the subway system while every rival gang in New York is hunting them down.
If you map the narrative mechanics beat for beat, it is a direct, unapologetic adaptation of the Anabasis.
Cyrus, the gang leader in the movie, is literally named after Cyrus the Younger. Coney Island is the Black Sea, the water they are desperately trying to reach. The hostile gangs they fight in the Bronx and Manhattan are the mountain tribes of Armenia.
It's brilliant.
Saul Urich took Xenophon's ancient military text and flawlessly translated it into the gritty urban landscape of 1970s New York. You can trace a direct, unbroken line from a starving Greek mercenary in 401 BC straight to a leather vest-wearing gang member in cinema history.
It really demonstrates the universal resonance of Xenophon's core theme. Beyond the hoplite tactics and the geography, the Anabasis is fundamentally a study in human organization.
How so?
Well, it asks, how do you maintain societal order when your world is ending? Xenophon reveals that they didn't just survive by swinging bronze spears. They survived by debating, reasoning, and clinging to their identity as free citizens, even when they were stripped of absolutely everything else.
They took the concept of their civilization and carried it with them in their minds across those frozen mountains.
It is a profound testament to resilience.
Let's pull all these threads together. We started with 10,000 elite mercenaries executing a flawless tactical battle, only to lose their employer and watch their generals walk into a fatal trap.
A total disaster.
We dissected how they formed a marching republic, fighting off frostbite, starvation, and mountain tribes just to reach the sea. We saw Xenophon talk his way out of a mutiny and use a burner account to secure his legacy.
The misgens of Syracuse strikes again.
Right. And we tracked how that desperate march provided the blueprint for Alexander the Great to conquer the world and gave us one of the greatest movies of the 1970s.
The irony is just staggering. An expedition that was, by all geopolitical metrics, an absolute and utter failure ended up shaping the future of Western civilization.
It really did. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, there is one final fascinating detail from your sources that highlights just how precarious this entire timeline really was.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to bring up.
Early in the text, there is a brief cameo by the legendary philosopher Socrates. Before this expedition even began, Xenophon went to his friend Socrates and asked for advice on whether or not he should join Cyrus's mercenary army.
Right. And Socrates, being the quintessential philosopher, deferred the question. He advised Xenophon to make the journey to Delphi and ask the oracle for guidance.
But Xenophon was young, ambitious, and already entirely determined to go. He wanted the glory. So when he arrived at Delphi, instead of asking the oracle if he should go on the journey, he totally engineered the question.
He was very sneaky about it.
So sneaky. He slyly asked the oracle which specific gods he should pray and sacrifice to in order to ensure a successful journey. He phrased the question to guarantee a supportive answer.
He deliberately gamed the system. He circumvented the oracle's ability to tell him no.
He totally gamed it. But ponder the butterfly effect of that single moment for a second. What if Xenophon had asked the honest question?
That's a huge what if.
What if he asked, should I go? And the oracle had explicitly said no. Without his rhetorical skills and tactical innovations in the snows of Armenia, the 10,000 likely would have fractured and perished in the mountains.
Almost certainly.
If they perished, Philip of Macedon never reads the Anabasis. He never realizes the Persian Empire is vulnerable. Alexander the Great never marches east. The entire map of the ancient world, the spread of Hellenistic culture, all of it might look completely different today.
All because a young man asked a cleverly phrased question to get the answer he wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just goes to show, when you find yourself stranded thousands of miles from home, sometimes the only thing that guarantees your survival is deciding, before you even pack your bags, that failure simply isn't an option.